Anyone who has ever lived next to another human being knows the distinct rising heat of a neighborhood dispute. Whether it's an unkempt fence, disputed property lines, or a barking dog at 2 in the morning, these conflicts feel incredibly personal, and the emotional stakes are always high. Our usual instinct is to get angry. We start arguments, we call the local council, or we threaten legal action. But classical economics looks at this exact same problem and strips away the anger entirely, offering an objective, purely mathematical path to peace. This abstract diagram represents the foundation of that economic approach, created by Nobel laureate Ronald Coase. Coase built his famous Coase Theorem on a simple scenario. One farmer grazes cattle, and a neighboring farmer grows crops. The conflict arises when the cattle start wandering across the property line to eat the crops, costing the second farmer money. Coase argued that the solution isn't about deciding who is morally right or wrong. Instead, it's about reaching a Pareto efficiency outcome, a mutual financial agreement where both parties are satisfied and no one loses out. If the cattle herder owns all the property rights, the crop farmer simply pays the cattle herder to build a fence, protecting the crops and saving themselves from further financial loss. In the frictionless theoretical world of classical economics, concepts like peace, quiet, and seclusion aren't rights to be fought over. They are commodities that neighbors can buy and sell, provided the price is right. To see how this actually works, let's pull the Coase theorem out of the pasture and put it into a modern setting. Imagine you live next door to a venue that regularly plays heavy bass music, keeping you awake until 2 in the morning. The economically rational solution to this problem is surprisingly straightforward. You value a good night's sleep, so you walk next door and offer the venue owner $50 to turn down the volume. They accept the money, lower the music, and both parties are theoretically happy. But try to picture actually doing that. Imagine handing a crisp $50 bill to the exact person who is actively ruining your night. It feels incredibly unnatural. The math behind the Coase theorem is flawless on paper. The problem is that it immediately breaks down the moment it collides with the messy reality of human emotions and social conventions. Behavioral economists like Richard Thaler argue that the classical model assumes humans are perfectly rational actors. We aren't. As a species, we prioritize fairness over economic efficiency. When we think about handing over cash to a noisy neighbor, our brain refuses to process it as a simple transaction for sleep. We see it as rewarding someone for bad behavior. The offer feels so inherently unfair that we will willingly take a financial hit, or in this case, a sleep deficit, just to punish the person making the noise. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman identified a second psychological roadblock, the endowment effect. This is our natural instinct to place a highly inflated value on the things we already possess, simply because we own them. Looking at this chart, you can see the endowment effect in action. The venue owner feels highly attached to their music and their property, demanding an irrationally high price to stop playing. At the exact same time, you feel attached to the quiet you used to enjoy, meaning you demand an irrationally high price to endure the noise. The two figures never intersect. Driven by our innate sense of entitlement, we lock ourselves into a psychological gridlock. We ensure that a fair market price for a quiet night can never actually be reached. Beyond the psychological hurdles, introducing money into a social dispute creates a much more dangerous problem. The philosopher Michael Sandel points out that financial incentives can actually corrupt social norms. A payment for silence changes a neighbor's long-term behavior by creating a perverse financial incentive. As this calendar grid illustrates, the venue quickly realizes that being annoying is now a highly lucrative business model. Once they know you are willing to pay $50 for silence on a Saturday, there is nothing stopping them from turning up the amplifiers on Tuesday, Thursday, and every other day of the week, just to extract more cash. Market mechanisms erode social cooperation in these disputes, effectively rewarding the behavior you hope to stop. If financial contracts fail and arguing only creates enemies, we need to find an economic strategy that actually works over the garden fence. The Austrian behavioral economist Ernst Fehr found that humans are biologically wired to be strong reciprocators. He calls this conditional cooperation. If someone treats us poorly, we respond in kind. But if someone does us a favor, we feel deeply, inherently bound to return it. So instead of knocking on the venue's door with a lawyer or a $50 bill, you walk over and offer genuine praise. You compliment the quality of their food or tell them they run a great business. This diagram shows how that social gesture bypasses the financial gridlock. By offering kind words, you create a psychological debt. The venue owner, prompted by conditional cooperation, feels an immediate obligation to return the favor, often by voluntarily turning down the music. Conditional cooperation works because it relies on honor rather than commerce. It costs nothing, making it the most effective tool in the microeconomy of our personal lives. Both theories remain valid, provided we recognize where one economy ends and the other begins. If your noisy neighbor happens to be an expanding international airport, market-based compensation is exactly the right path to take. You are dealing with a massive, faceless entity where social norms don't apply. Successful conflict resolution requires identifying the economy you are operating in. When you're dealing with the people who live next door, keep your wallet closed. Social currency is the only currency that buys lasting peace.